Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Once again, Eric Netrup with Keep Indiana Learning ahead of the virtually different 2022 conference. And I get a second round with one of my favorite sponsors, Victor Karkar of Scribble. And today we're going to be taking a closer look at what some of the things he shared with us last week in case you missed it. So some new content today from last week. Ahead of the conference, which kicks off tomorrow. But first and foremost, for new viewers, let me introduce to you my friend Victor and bring him up on the screen right now. Victor, good to see you again this afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us once again.
Of course, happy to be here. Hope you had a good weekend.
I sure did. How about you?
It was good. It was good. It's good to be in the summer months, enjoying that, and looking forward to the conference starting tomorrow.
Well, starting tomorrow, things are going to be hot and humid here in Indiana. That is for dang sure. So I think a lot of folks will be looking to take reprieve from, I don't know, maybe some landscaping duties to see what's going on during the virtual conference. And hopefully they can think about writing instruction as they do and find some value in what Scribble brings to the table. But before we jump into taking a look at some of the things there, how in the world did you conceive of Scribble and get it to the place that where we're bringing it to Indiana educators?
Thanks for asking. So, it's my baby. I basically needed something like this when I was a student in school. So originally, like a lot of entrepreneurs, it starts with, as they say, an itch. What's the saying? Like you basically scratch your own itch because you have some problem that needs to be solved that you personally have felt. And that's what I did here. So I originally needed the things that we built as a student to help me with my research and writing work. And that was a long time ago. But over the years, we've managed to basically work with a lot of educators, which includes, English teachers, social studies teachers, science teachers, instructional coaches, librarians, and then, district leaders, school-based leaders, principals, chief academic officers, et cetera. And so over the years, we've managed to kind of move and add additional things beyond the student experience to include educator input to make the platform better for them in terms of supporting research and writing instruction.
Fantastic. Well, I know from last week, this is going to be a slippery slope for me to get into in a 20-minute window. So I'm going to pull your slides up here, and I know you want to show us some of the product too. But let's bring some folks up to the current with regards to what Scribble accomplishes. I know good and well that there are some really interesting slides in your deck here. So the floor is yours, Victor.
Thanks. Yeah, and so I know we did a pre-conference webinar on Friday. The Friday before the conference to basically kind of give an overview. And that included primarily going through this presentation slide deck. So I'm not going to do that again today. I don't want to be redundant. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reference some of these slides here and there, but we're really going to try to focus on some other things, which are basically drilling down in a couple of different areas, just so that, folks can watch that and get the overview, and then they can watch this as a sort of follow-up second pre-conference webinar and maybe learn some new things. This is kind of the presentation, we started with, and, we certainly went through the background and all that. We even talked a little bit about the problem that we solved, and, we're not going to go through all that now. What I wanted to try to do was make sure that people had a visual reference for this presentation, let them know that we also even referenced sort of a 2-minute video that they should watch, which is in our booth for the conference, as well as on our homepage of our website. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of hit on a couple of very specific things that I mentioned, but we didn't get into a ton of detail on in the Friday pre-conference webinar. So one of those things is sort of assistive features that we've built into Scribble that not everybody necessarily knows, or, if you've looked at us and just seen our website or our video, these things aren't really highlighted there. So I thought what I'd do is, speak a little bit to this in a little detail, but then switch over to Chrome and show you a little bit of how it works and what it actually looks like. So, for those that are joining us for the first time, I'd say, first of all, go back and watch the previous webinar, which was on Friday. You'll get a lot more sort of basic level understanding of what Scribble is, kind of what our mission is, what the problems that we solve, et cetera. And those that maybe just need a little refresher, basically, we built a really advanced research and writing platform. It turns out that the annotation tools that we built inside that research and writing platform are also really helpful for close reading and text analysis, which is why some people have been using us for literacy in terms of close reading and text analysis, because as everybody probably knows who's watching this, annotation has always been a great mechanism to help people, students in particular, engage with the text. And so we did talk about this on Friday, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I will say that if you decide to use Scribble for research and writing, that's fantastic. If you decide to use us for close reading and text analysis, that's great too. And then what we didn't talk about in a lot of detail was sort of the next level of depth, which is if you are using us certainly for literacy, or if an individual student is doing some close reading related to their research for a paper, they may be in a situation where they could really benefit from these assistive features that we've built. And again, these features that you're seeing here on this slide, which are read aloud translations and definitions, are not new concepts in the world, but they are things that we feel like we've made more interesting and more valuable because we've been able to combine them with annotation, which is one of the unique things in our platform. So, for example, read aloud. Let me just go ahead and switch over to Chrome and quickly show you what it looks like. There we go. So you might have seen a little bit of a weirdness there as we switched over, but hopefully you can see it okay now. Is that right, Eric? Are you able to see it?
Yeah, very elegant transition, Victor.
So I'm going to pull up, let's see, this. So just for the people that haven't seen our stuff before, this is the Scrible library, which is where all your stuff is stored when you're annotating and curating articles. So these are all different articles that have been saved to this sort of demo account Scrible library. And this particular library is focused on the Mission to Mars paper. So, it is an assignment, let's say, that I'm working on as a student. And what you're able to see here is that we have different types of articles that are saved in here. Web pages, PDFs, some other resources, like maybe something from a book. Oops. Sorry. Getting
real world example. I'm deep in my academic research and I'm trying to stay focused, but the world keeps trying to distract me. And we know we need tools. We need tools that keep us engaged and moving forward.
My problem is I've got too much Chrome open. So, all right, let's see if that does it. Hang on a second. All right, there we go. Sorry about that.
There you go.
So
I like the real world example. It feels right. It feels legit.
That's right. It's funny. I'm between two computers now, so I clearly did not remember to close all my notifications on this machine. Hopefully, whoever it is doesn't call back. But anyway, to get back to this here, what I was saying is that we have different kinds of articles that are saved here. And what I did just now, before I started explaining the library, is clicked on one of those articles, which we loaded here in a different browser tab. And so this is an article that it's previously been saved to Scribble. And you can see here it's all related to Mars. And what you're seeing down below and on the right are basically different tools that we load on top of the article.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So here, for example, our annotation tools. On the right-hand side, we've got some comments that are associated with those annotations. And what you're going to see here is that, again, trying to show you the accessibility tools, the text accessibility and comprehension tools. Down below, we've got those three buttons that correspond to what I showed you on the slide. Yep. So here's
I recognize the icons. Yeah.
Same icons. So what a lot of platforms do that have these kinds of features is that they'll basically allow you to do something like select some text and then click a button. So we do that as well.
Pathfinder lands and dispatches Sojourner, the first wheeled rover, to explore.
Right. But what's unique about Scribble is that right. So and that's again, you've seen that probably in other platforms. What makes it unique in our system is that you get to combine that with annotation. So let's say you've got a highlight that's already been made on the page. And so let's say, for example, I'm a teacher that's working with a student that maybe has an executive functioning issue or attention issue, and you've given them a really long, dense text. Well, what you can do is you can draw their attention to particular passages by, for example, highlighting them. And so when the student pulls it up, they could take that particular passage, and then this is not a good example because it's a very simple, short thing that we're going to demo this on. But imagine that it's a more complicated text, right? If the teacher sort of pre-highlighted that or preloaded it essentially for the student, when they come here, they can click on the same ear icon to have just that annotated passage.
Asaph Hall discovers the two moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos.
So you can have just the essentially the annotated passages read aloud to you, right? Which is a way of kind of adding a new twist on that.
Yeah.
The other thing that's kind of interesting is that it's not just the text in the article that you can have read aloud to you. You can also, type comments, let's say for the student, like in this particular case, this is an example of a student that's left comment for themselves. But if you were a teacher and you left a comment for the student, and the student pulls that up, they can actually click on this button and have the text that you left for them in the comment read aloud to them.
This is for my second argument.
Or if this is a teacher writing it for a student, they might have said, hey, this is great for your second argument, right? And so anything you type in as a comment to a student as guidance for how they get through that text can be read aloud to them as well. Does that make sense?
It not only makes sense, it's brilliant. I can think of several students who were reluctant readers that I'm like, well, I don't know how I get over this for you, except for making it, leveling the path as much as I can. And I would definitely, as a former English teacher, have said, I did everything I could. And you mean that you couldn't take a moment to listen to what Scribble would read to you?
Right. Well,
So,
and
yeah.
then the other thing you can, it makes it a little bit more interactive, right? So if you have a student that's disengaged or not as motivated, or again, has one of those executive functioning issues or attention issues, this kind of makes it a little bit more fun and interesting. I'm not saying it's like a game, but at least makes it a little bit more interactive, right?
Exactly.
And can at least draw their attention to it, if that helps. So that's read aloud. And again, the basic concept of read aloud is not new in the world, but what we've done here is combine it with annotation to give you those additional interactivity kind of elements, as well as the ability to sort of, I like to call it kind of front loading or preloading the work, where you're actually able to draw students' attention to that particular content that you want ahead of time, before they actually open the article.
Definitely.
So that's one example. Then the other two things here were translations and definitions. So just going from from left to right, if we come to translation, you'll notice here that we've got these kind of sidebars, as we call them in Scribble. So on the right hand side, we've got the comment sidebar, and then I think in our video you may have seen that we have the citation sidebar, which automatically extracts citation information about the article, and there's all these other sidebars as well. We won't go through all of them right now. But we have also built basically a translations and definition sidebar, which is the last button down here. And right now, if you scroll up and down, you'll see that nothing has been identified there, but nothing has been translated or defined yet. But let's say that I came across a word that I wasn't familiar with, or sorry, let's say I guess we're going to do translations first, right? So if I wanted to know, what a certain word here meant in a language that I'm more familiar with, as a student, I can click on the drop down here, and I can see that I would like something translated from English to Spanish. But I could also pick one of 50 other languages, right? So it could be,
no kidding.
Italian. Let's just stick with Italian. And so as a student, I can click on Surface and click on this button here, or select Surface and then click on this button here, and it'll translate it from English to Italian, and then just pop up there. There it is.
Oh, look at that!
Right, and so that's there. And then if you expand it, it'll give you a little bit more information.
That's great.
And so you can translate to and from 50 different languages. And the other thing is that, one of the things we've seen, which the reason we did this way, is that one of the things we've seen is that in some other systems, when you have a translation feature and a definition feature, one of the shortcomings we've seen is that, you get that defined or translated phrase or word, but then it doesn't stick around, meaning there's an X, you click out of it and it's ephemeral, it goes away. In our world, what we've done basically, we've kept it in this sidebar, which now lives with the article. So the student can always come back and look at, okay, through this article or that article, whatever I'm reading, I can always just pull up this tab and see all the words and phrases I had difficulty with. Now, you can imagine that because we're persisting this data, down the road, we're going to be able to, for example, provide a vocabulary list essentially to a student or to a teacher about all the words and phrases that the student had difficulty with, or that if you're a teacher, you'd be interested to see what all of your students maybe had difficulty with across a class.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And then definitions works the same way. So let's just say that, I didn't know what microbial meant. I click click on the define option here, and let's see, there it is. It's jumping. It's a little jumpy right now. So then you get the definition right there.
Oh, that's great. And the whole idea being that students don't get hung up, whether they're an English language learner or vice versa. They're doing some work maybe in an international school, which is right down the road from the CIESC, or an international baccalaureate school, which there are plenty in the vicinity. It's like multiple applications here, whether it's equity, supporting striving learners of new languages, but also embedded vocabulary building without having to leave Scribble and remember what you're doing and potentially get distracted. You're right here. You run into an obstacle and then you solve it. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things is that we found that we had originally built some of this stuff at the request of special ed directors, right? Who sort of saw, okay, and annotation is really good to help students kind of engage with the text, but then like if you've got students that aren't as familiar with the language, or there's some other issues, then these features would really help. And so we kind of built it with a sort of special ed mentality, but we also are very familiar with the concept of, universal design for learning, or UDL, which means that you don't try to make it so narrow. And so we didn't. We basically kind of built it with that framework, and it turns out, hey, it's not just useful in special ed, but it's also useful, again, as you can see here, for foreign language, for ELL. And interestingly, we've even found people, using it in ways that we didn't necessarily imagine. I remember getting an email from, what was that, an example? Oh, it was a teacher we work with in Southern California who said that she has what you'd probably call a high achieving student that was reading dense life science like papers. I think it was from JSTOR or something like that, or maybe from PubMed. And, he wasn't sort of what you'd probably call, a particularly challenged or struggling student. But he found that the definition feature really helped him, essentially better get through dense text that maybe was a little bit advanced for somebody of his grade, because it's probably college level reading or something like that. So I think it's even useful in ways that we didn't originally intend, and that's great, because that's kind of the whole point of UDL, right? That people can pick it up and run with it whatever way.
That's exactly it. And just having that alignment to UDL is a boon for those that are looking for one solution versus another. Even if we are all on the same team in terms of helping students support student growth. We have a few more minutes left. So is there one more thing that you'd like to show us before we talk about what to expect from Scrible the next 2 days at the conference itself, Victor?
Yeah, just while we're here, I just noticed that what I basically did was show you something that's not very well explained in our website or in our video. I thought maybe I could quickly point out one or two additional things that are not really well explained in the video. We're due to do a major revamp of the website, so a lot of this stuff will become more visible then. But there's a couple of features that are kind of cool and interesting that people don't always know about. So what I'm going to do, for example, is I'm going to pick maybe a couple of articles here, and I'm going to click on a button here called our summary feature. And when you do this, what it does is it basically extracts all those annotations from those articles and shows them in a simple list. Right? So here I've got my yellow highlight from this article. I've got my blue highlight, my blue comment, in this article, the Mars exploration article, etc. And so this is a quick way to basically just grab it all, because you can basically copy this and then paste these wherever you want to, if you want to.
Into your word processor. Yeah.
Into word processor. Yeah, and we're planning to make this a little more sophisticated in the future. We can filter by color and things like that to help you kind of quickly, essentially collate and filter through things. But that's a really great feature that might be useful that we, frankly, probably haven't talked about enough.
It's a good one.
There's that.
Right, yeah, that keeps the student moving forward with what we both know to be a task that sometimes students lose engagement on. So if they can see their progress and see that they're actually, every annotation that they make is progressing towards that final outcome, that is more than grease for the skids. It's student engagement, pure and simple. I love it.
Well, since you mentioned progress, maybe I'll just show this one other thing as well. So, I think in the video and what I talked about on the last pre-conference webinar on Friday, we talked a fair amount about the teacher level view of the analytics and the metrics associated with like a class or an individual student that's working through an assignment, like a research paper assignment. This has always kind of like for us been a little bit of a work in progress, but we also actually have taken some of those metrics and essentially brought them down to the student level. So in this example, if I'm a student working on a paper, I can see, not only my sources, my annotations, for example. This might take a second here to load because I'm on my older, slower machine. A bibliography and outline, etc. But we also have a metrics tab where we bring some of those analytics down to the student level. And so the student can actually see interesting data about the research that they've curated in their library. So, for example, I have a whole bunch of articles from the open web. I've got a couple from databases, some that we're not categorizing yet, and so forth. And so this would be like, in my library, and these might be the articles that made it into my bibliography for my paper for this assignment. So I've got 6 from the open web in there. And we've got other data that we're kind of working on. I think the most interesting version of some of these graphs is the stuff down here, where we give you a breakdown of essentially where the things are coming from. Oh, one's a NASA article. We've got some URLs of some of the other open web sources. And then we've got stuff coming from, various sources that ended up making it all the way from my library into my bibliography for my paper.
Love it. Yeah, just lots of rabbit trails. I'm biting my tongue right now, Victor. I don't want to steal focus from your presentation here, let alone what you're going to share tomorrow and Wednesday. But man, that's fantastic. You bring the quantitative to the qualitative, as it were.
That's a really good point. I think it's harder in writing and in research because people don't have as much data. And we're proud that we think we're able to generate some potentially useful data for teachers to help them make better decisions about where their students are, how they progress, etc.
Yeah, I'd very much have this up on my screen doing one-on-one counsel with students through like an extended research project, and use the metrics tab there to encourage them to look for different types of sources, let alone figure out if maybe the ones that I perhaps curated on behalf of the students wasn't replete enough. Like I might find things from their own discovery that's worth sharing with the whole class, or the next time I teach this particular unit or another period in the day and so forth. I mean, tons of applications for having that sort of data dashboard of writing and the quality of sources. I love it.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So I know we're short on time, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. You're going to share more tomorrow and Wednesday during the conference, let alone folks can always reach out to you or your team to see an entire comprehensive demo. But share with us some high-level stuff, whether it's just about the relationship of Scribble for all of Indiana educators, or just what it's going to be and what's going to be in your presentations tomorrow and Wednesday.
Yeah, so basically, certainly on Wednesday, we're doing kind of an hour-long, or we call it Meet Scribble, your research and writing super app. It's going to probably be a bunch of people that from all over the place, people that have seen our half-an-hour webinar beforehand from Friday, and people that haven't. So we're going to try to keep it diverse and cover a lot of different topics. I'm going to try to do a pretty quick version or recap of what we did on Friday for folks that are newbies and haven't seen us before. But we're going to try to cover some other topics as well. So, for example, we're going to tell you about a little bit about what's coming in the fall that's new. We've got some really cool, exciting stuff that we're planning to do, and I'm going to leave it as a teaser right now. So hopefully people come on Wednesday to hear about what's new that we're going to be launching in the fall. I think it's going to be exciting. Some of the new features and capabilities that we're going to be launching. We are also going to have a little bit of discussion, and it's not going to be just a one-way conversation. We actually want to hear from folks that join the session about a very particular topic that's kind of near and dear to us, and that is essentially the kind of college readiness and depth of knowledge or deep learning that people normally saw pre-pandemic when they did this kind of work, right? The 10-page research paper, or even the 5-page research paper, or a project where even maybe there's no writing involved. All that was really important stuff that historically has helped students get ready for the kind of work they have to do in a big way when they go to college. But when the pandemic happened, we saw a lot of teachers and librarians around the country pull back from that work because it was just logistically difficult to manage from home doing virtual instruction. So we're gonna have an interesting discussion about that. We want to hear people's stories about, did they experience that? To what extent did they experience that? What did they do to try to get around that? And then of course we'll try to, add our voice and sort of say, here's how we think we could help. If hopefully this doesn't happen, but if there's another lockdown, or if you end up in a different situation down the road where there's a reason to that causes you not be able to meet face-to-face with students, it just, what can we do to help in those situations? So we'll talk about that. We'll cover some other topics as well.
Sounds great. Well, Victor, like I told you before, this was a tool I would have used in my writing instruction. I was proud of what I'd come up with, but it pales in comparison, as I said on Friday. I know good and well you're going to have a receptive audience with this crowd in particular, and want to wish you the best of luck, because what you're doing is incredibly important, not just for teachers, but particularly for students developing those higher order thinking skills, being able to back up their claims and write that that college entrance essay that they have to, and to do so using Scribble would be a boon. I'm sure you probably have stories about that. But everyone, I want to thank Victor for bringing Scribble to the forefront and being a part of our event. Be sure to take a look at the agenda and make time to check out what Scribble is doing in Indiana and beyond, because they can do the same thing for your school and the students that you guys serve. So Victor, thanks so very much for being a part of this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been great. Take care.
All right, everyone, be sure to check out Scribble. I will